to us and to this beautiful night.
Randy had everything tonight. The room, the ring, the woman he chose. He had built this celebration brick by brick, and he was proud of it. Proud of himself. Proud of the choice he made 2 years ago when he decided that Stacy wasn't enough. He never looked it back. Until tonight, the doors opened. And Randy's world, the one he had carefully, confidently constructed on top of her broken heart, cracked straight down the middle. Because the woman who walked through those doors wasn't broken. She was glowing. She wasn't alone either. She was on the arm of the most powerful man in the room, his boss. Randy's hand went still. His chest went tight. His mind went somewhere he had spent 2 years trying not to go. Stacy. Not the Stacy he left. Not the woman he dismissed with a cold "it's over" and never looked back at. This Stacy smiled like someone had finally told her the truth about herself. This Stacy walked like she had nothing left to prove. This Stacy looked at Randy, directly, calmly, without a single tremor of pain. And that look was the thing that broke him. Because it wasn't anger, it wasn't revenge. It was something so much worse. It was peace. Lauren gripped his arm. Randy, who is she? He couldn't answer. Because how do you explain to the woman you chose that the woman you left just walked into your engagement party as the most important person in the room? How do you explain that you threw away something rare, and the whole world just showed up to watch you realize it? Randy thought letting Stacy go was the smartest thing he ever did. He was about to find out it was the only mistake that would never leave him alone. 2 years. That's how long Stacy gave him. 2 years of cooking meals he barely acknowledged. 2 years of adjusting her voice so it wouldn't upset him. 2 years of shrinking, quietly, steadily, into someone she almost didn't recognize by the end. Randy wasn't cruel in obvious ways. He didn't shout. He didn't break things. He was crueler than that. He was dismissive. He talked over her in rooms full of people. He forgot things she told him, and made her feel foolish for expecting him to remember. He made her feel like loving him was a privilege she had to keep earning. And she stayed. She stayed because she believed in who he could be. She stayed because leaving felt like failure. She stayed because somewhere beneath all that noise, she thought, she hoped, that he saw her. He didn't. She found out the truth on a Tuesday. A message, on his phone, from Lauren. Not one message, not a mistake, a conversation, weeks long. Warm in ways Randy had stopped being with Stacy a long time ago. She put the phone down. She didn't cry. She didn't confront him. She told herself it wasn't real. That she was misreading it. That there was an explanation. That the man she had given 2 years to wasn't capable of this. She was wrong. 3 days later, Randy sat across from her at the kitchen table. The same table she had cooked 100 meals on. And said 4 words. It's over. I'm done. No reason. No apology. No acknowledgement of what she had poured into him. Just 4 words and then he was gone. Stacy sat in her apartment that night for a long time. The quiet was enormous. The kind of quiet that presses against your chest and waits to see what you'll do with it. She could fall apart. She almost did. But somewhere in that silence, something in her made a different choice. A quiet, stubborn, certain choice. Not for him. Not one more broken thing for him. She chose herself instead. And she began, slowly, imperfectly, one day at a time, to rebuild. She wasn't looking for anyone. Stacy had started showing up to her own life again. Her work, her ambitions, the parts of herself she had put on hold while she was busy trying to be enough for Randy. It was at a corporate networking event. One she attended for herself, not for anyone else, that she first noticed him. Or rather, he first noticed her. Daesung was not a man who moved through rooms undetected. But he also wasn't a man who announced himself. He had the particular stillness of someone who had nothing to prove. He saw Stacy across the room. Not the way men usually looked at her, like they were cataloging her, deciding whether she was worth approaching. He looked at her the way you look at something that surprises you. Something genuine in a room full of performance. He introduced himself simply. No titles, no mentions of companies or wealth. Just his name. She was guarded. She smiled politely, and kept her walls exactly where she had built them. He didn't try to climb them. He came back the following week. A message, thoughtful, unhurried. He had remembered something she mentioned in passing and followed up on it. Not a line, not a tactic, just attention. Real attention. Stacy didn't know what to do with that at first. She had spent 2 years with a man who could barely remember what she said 5 minutes ago. Sung remembered everything, not because he was trying to impress her, because he was actually listening. He pursued her slowly, patiently, the way you handle something precious, not because it's fragile, but because it deserves care. She resisted for weeks. Then one evening, over a dinner where she laughed more freely than she had in years, she realized something had shifted. Not dramatically, not the way movies promise you love will feel. Just quietly, solidly, she trusted him. And then, before she even had a name for what was happening, she loved him. It felt nothing like what she had before. There was no walking on eggshells. No monitoring his mood before she spoke. No wondering what version of him would show up today. With Daesung, she just got to be. She hadn't known how exhausted she was until she finally got to rest. Randy sent the invitation himself. He had spent weeks planning this engagement. The venue, the guest list, the impression it would make. Every detail was calculated, and the most important calculation of all was Daesung. His boss, his benchmark. The man Randy had been performing for since the day he was hired. Randy wanted Daesung to walk into that room and see him differently. Not as an employee, as a peer. As a man who had built something. He called Daesung's office personally. Left a message with his assistant. Followed up with a handwritten note because he'd heard Daesung appreciated that kind of thing. He felt good about it. He had no idea. Daesung read the invitation over breakfast and passed it across the table to Stacy without a word. She picked it up. Read the name at the top. Daesung watched her. "You know him," he said. Not a question. "I did," she said, once. "Are you all right?" She looked up, and then, slowly, she smiled. "I want to go," she said. Daesung studied her for a moment. He knew her well enough now to read the difference between the smiles she performed and the ones that came from somewhere real. This one was real, calm and clear and completely unbothered. "Then we go," he said. And that was all. She didn't need revenge. She had never needed it. She just wanted to close a door she hadn't realized was still slightly open. Not with drama, not with a confrontation. Just by showing up. Whole. The night of the engagement, Stacy stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized herself. Not because she looked different, because she finally looked right. She had spent so long adjusting her reflection to match what someone else needed to see. And now, for the first time in longer than she could remember, the woman in the mirror just looked like her. Settled. Sure. Arrived. She heard Daesung before she saw him. His footsteps quiet. His presence filling the doorway behind her, without demanding anything from the room. He looked at her for a moment without speaking. Then, "You are extraordinary." Not a compliment designed to charm her. Just a fact he was stating plainly, the way he always spoke to her, like she deserved the truth without decoration. She laughed. Fully, freely. The kind of laugh that had been rare for so long it still surprised her when it came easily. "Let's go," she said, and took his arm. They weren't going to cause a scene. They weren't going to walk in with intention to wound. They were simply going to show up, and sometimes, for the person who once told you that you weren't enough, showing up is everything. The ballroom was full and celebrating when they arrived. Music, champagne, the low hum of a room full of people who believed this night belonged entirely to Randy. And it did. Right up until the golden doors opened. Stacy walked in with her head up. Her hand rested easily on Daesung's arm. Her smile was real. Not for the room, not for Randy, just genuinely, quietly real. The smile of a woman who had survived the worst of someone and come out the other side without bitterness. The room noticed them immediately. Daesung commanded that. The kind of attention that follows people who have built real things. Heads turned. Voices softened. The crowd shifted naturally, the way crowds do when someone significant enters. And then the murmurs started. The guests who knew Randy. The ones who had heard a name mentioned once or twice in passing. A look exchanged between two women near the bar. A hand touching an arm. A sharp intake of breath. Randy was mid-conversation on the other side of the room when he felt it. He didn't know what it was at first. Just a change in the air. A subtle shift in the energy of the room that made the back of his neck tighten. He turned toward the entrance, instinctively. The way you turn toward a sound you can't quite identify. His body registered her before his mind caught up. And then his mind caught up. Every muscle in him locked. His face didn't fall. It emptied, like something essential had been pulled out of it in an instant, leaving just the surface behind. His chest stopped moving normally. His grip on his champagne glass tightened without him noticing. Because Stacy was here. His Stacy. The woman he had replaced. The woman he had dismissed. The woman he had spent 2 years making feel invisible. Walking through his engagement party on the arm of his billionaire boss like she had always belonged in rooms like this. Like he had been the temporary one. Lauren felt him change before she saw why. She felt the shift in his body. The sudden rigidity. The silence where there had just been easy conversation, and turned to follow his eye line. Her hand closed around his arm. Randy. Her voice was low, controlled, dangerous. What's wrong? He couldn't answer. He was still looking at Stacy. And Stacy, calm, unhurried, glowing in a way he had never managed to make her glow, had just looked up and found him. She didn't flinch. She didn't smirk. She just looked at him with those clear, steady eyes. The eyes of a woman who had already processed every version of this moment, long before walked she through the door. And the expression on her face was the thing that undid him completely. Because it wasn't triumph. It wasn't pain. It was peace. The kind of peace you only find on the other side of someone who hurt you. After you've done the work, carried the weight, and finally set it down. Randy stood in the center of his celebration, surrounded by everyone who had come to honor him, and felt for the first time the full cost of every choice he had ever made with her. Lauren's grip on his arm tightened. Randy, who is she? The question sat in the air between them. And the silence that came back was answer enough. He couldn't move. That was the thing that frightened him most. Randall, who had always known exactly what to say, exactly how to fill a room, exactly how to perform confidence even when he had none, could not move. He watched Daesung and Stacy cross the room together. Easy, unhurried, like two people who had nothing to defend and nowhere to rush to. And with every step they took, something in Randy's chest pulled tighter. The memories came without invitation. Her voice, soft and careful, asking him a question he had answered with a sigh. Her face across the dinner table, watching him scroll his phone while she spoke. The night she tried to tell him something that mattered to her, and he had said, "Can we do this later?" And later never came. He remembered the messages. Lauren's name, appearing more and more. The way it had felt exciting rather than wrong. The way he had told himself Stacy was fine. That she was steady. That she would manage. That she always managed. He remembered the night he ended it. How little effort it had taken him. 4 words and he was already thinking about something else before he reached the door. He hadn't lost sleep. He hadn't looked back. He had assumed she would fade. She had not faded. She was the brightest thing in the room. Randy. Lauren's voice had an edge to it now. Not the soft, possessive grip from moments ago. Something sharper. He turned to her slowly, like a man surfacing from deep water. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at Stacy. Her eyes moved the way a woman's eyes move when she is calculating. Measuring, comparing, arriving at a conclusion she doesn't want to reach. Is that her? Quiet. Precise. Each word placed like a blade. Randy said nothing, and his silence told her everything she needed to know. Lauren's jaw tightened. She released his arm. Daesung reached them first. He moved through the room the way he did everything. Without performance, without announcement. He extended his hand to Randy, and his expression held exactly what it always held in professional settings. Calm authority. Nothing more. Nothing less. Randy shook it. His hand was not steady. Daesung's was. "Thank you for the invitation," Daesung said simply. "Congratulations on the engagement." Then Daesung turned slightly, and his whole posture shifted. Just barely. Just enough. The small, unconscious shift of a man orienting toward the person who matters most in any room he enters. "You've met my partner," he said. "Stacy." 3 words. Randy felt them land in his stomach like stones dropped into still water. Partner. Not colleague. Not date. Partner. Said with the easy certainty of a man who has never had to convince anyone of what he and Stacy are to each other. Randy turned to her, and Stacy looked back at him. Clear eyes. Steady. Not performing composure, actually in it. There was no anger stored there. No satisfaction being suppressed. Just a woman who had walked through something hard and come out the other side without carrying the wreckage. She smiled. "Hello, Randy. Congratulations." And somehow they hit harder than any confrontation could have, because they required nothing from him and offered nothing either. They were just. Clean. Complete. The words of someone who had already finished the chapter he was still stuck inside. Randy felt something crack open in his chest. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just a slow, quiet fracture. The kind that comes when the truth finally arrives after you've spent years outrunning it. The ceremony was supposed to begin. Someone near the front of the room began guiding guests toward their seats. The string quartet shifted into the processional arrangement. Everything was in place. Everything except Randy. He was still standing exactly where Stacy had left him. In the same spot, wearing the same hollowed expression, his feet unwilling to carry him forward. "Randy." Lauren's voice came from across the room, public now. Composed but only just. He heard her. He didn't move. "Randy." Louder. A few heads turned. He finally walked toward her, slowly. And then, halfway across the room, his eyes moved. Just once. One involuntary glance back toward where Stacy stood beside Daesung, her hand resting in his, laughing at something he had just said. That was all. One look. But Lauren saw it. She saw it, and something inside her. Something she had been carefully, expertly maintaining since the moment Stacy walked through those doors. Finally broke. Not loudly. That wasn't Lauren's way. She looked at Randy for a long moment. Really looked. At the man she had pushed to choose her. The man she had been so certain she wanted. The man who was standing at their engagement party, in front of their guests. Unable to keep his eyes off the woman he had left to be with her. She reached down and set her champagne glass on the nearest table. Deliberately. Precisely. With the focused calm of someone making a decision they will not reverse. Then she walked. Not toward Randy. Not toward anyone. Just out. Straight through the room, shoulders back, head high. Her blue gown moving behind her as the guests parted, without understanding why. The doors closed behind her. The room went silent. Randy stood in the middle of it, alone. Stacy watched Lauren leave. She watched Randy stand there, untethered, undone, the architecture of his perfect night collapsing in real time. And she felt something she didn't expect. Not satisfaction, not relief, compassion, not for who Randy had been to her, but for what he was right now. A man finally meeting the consequences of choices he had made carelessly. A long time ago. It was not a pleasant thing to witness. Even now. She turned to Daesung. He was already looking at her, reading her the way he always did, quietly, without pressure, without telling her what he thought she should feel. She squeezed his hand once. He squeezed back. And then, barely perceptibly, he nodded. "Go, I'm here." She crossed the room alone. Randy heard her before he saw her. He turned, and for a moment his face opened up in a way it never had when they were together, raw and unguarded. Every wall completely gone. She stopped in front of him. Close enough to speak softly. Far enough that this wasn't intimacy. This was a closing. "I'm not here to hurt you, Randy." Her voice was low. "Only for him. I want you to know that." He looked at her. Really looked. The way he had never quite managed when she was his. Like he was only now seeing her clearly for the first time. Now that she belonged entirely to herself. "I know what you're afraid of," she continued. "You think I'll say something to him. You think I'll ask him to let you go. I won't. That's not who I am. It was never who I was." Randy's throat moved. "Go after Lauren," Stacy said. Gently. Firmly. "Fix what you broke tonight. She deserves that much from you. I'm not your problem anymore, Randy. I haven't been for a long time." His eyes were wet. The man who had once ended everything with 4 careless words now had none left at all. "Stacy, She shook her head, slowly. without cruelty. "Don't," she said softly. "Just go." She walked back across the room. Daesung saw her coming and didn't ask how it went. He already knew. He placed his hand over hers the moment she reached him, warm, steady, saying everything without a single word. They stood together, two people who had chosen well, who had found each other on the other side of pain and built something real and quiet and lasting. There was nothing to perform, nothing to prove, just the simple, solid truth of two people exactly where they were supposed to be. Across the room, Randy watched them. He thought about going after Lauren. He told himself he would. In a moment. In just a moment. But his feet stayed. Before we round up the story, I need your honest opinion in the comments section. Why did Randy freeze like that? Was it love finally waking up? Or was it simply his ego cracking because the woman he decided wasn't enough just walked in, looking like more than enough? Think carefully. Because there is a difference between missing someone and missing the control you had over them. Which one was it for Randy? And Stacy? She had all the power in that room. One word to Daesung and Randy's career is over. She chose grace instead. She chose peace. But was that strength? Or was it one final gift to a man who never deserved her generosity? What would you have done in her position? And what about Lauren? She pushed for this. She wanted Randy to choose her. And he did. She got the ring, the party, the man. But at her own engagement, that same man couldn't keep his eyes off the woman he left for her. She walked out. She was right to. But if Randy showed up at her door that night, broken and begging, should she let him in? He chose her once, but his eyes told a completely different story. Can you really trust a choice made by someone who can't stop looking away? And the biggest question of all, what does this story say about what we throw away? Randy had Stacy. Patient, loyal, extraordinary Stacy. He treated her like background noise. Like she was temporary. Daesung met the same woman and recognized her worth immediately. Same woman. Different eyes. Because value doesn't disappear because someone fails to see it. Stacy didn't become remarkable when Daesung found her. She was always remarkable. Randy just never looked closely enough to know what he was holding. Drop your answers in the comments section, and also let us know where you are watching from. We love seeing how far this story has traveled, and to everyone who stayed until the very end, thank you. Truly, your time means everything, and you made this story worth telling.